It's that time again. 25 more fantastic DOS games that I've encountered in the last 100 videos. Number 25, Wing Commander Privateer. Even though I had a torrid time and was blown into space debris repeatedly and without mercy by pirates, I knew that Privateer was a quality title based on the stellar presentation and the reputation of the developer alone. Instead of being a space combat sim like I expected, it's more of an open world space trading game with a combat sim and RPG elements included. The vast world of Wing Commander stretches out before you in this elite game on the frontier. Planetary governments, factions, talk of an ancient race and its artifacts, all fully voiced in the CD version. It has the prerequisite pieces for a true classic of a genre, and its adoring fans assure me that with a little more patience and understanding, it blossoms forth into something very memorable indeed. Just make sure you play the first 2 Wing Commanders first, and don't expect an easy ride on your first few missions. Number 24, Mars 3D. A recently translated post-apocalyptic Doom clone from Taiwan. For all its unpolished jank and potentially stolen assets, it performs its role admirably and could well be worth playing, as there were elements that reminded me more of build engine titles, and I was also able to run into an NPC like I did on my playthrough of Strife. I look forward to seeing this one picked up by one of the boomer shooter advocates later down the line, and played ironically by thousands of people in response. Number 23, Football Limited. It's not the most glamorous of genres, but this English iteration of the Bundesliga Manager series has all the hallmarks of a quality management sim. And for those of you who enjoyed the likes of Ultimate Soccer Manager and Premier Manager, there's plenty of recognisable features that scratch that footballing itch. Plus a few intriguing additions that you won't find elsewhere. So if you're not too sore about being repeatedly beaten by Germans in penalty shootouts, there may well be a sim for you here that's wunderbar. Number 22, Project Weltuntergang. While I was swiftly gunned down in this Wolf 3D modification, it's highly regarded by die-hard Wolfers, and does enough to differentiate itself from the original that I can see why. The reason this appeared on the list is because it's another example of what the DOS modding community brings to the table. If you've somehow played and completed Wolfenstein 3D and all its expansions and want more, the fun doesn't end there, thanks to the dedicated efforts of people like Cookie, releasing material for the game over a decade after its release. Now you can play Wolfenstein forever, though I've heard the next game those id boys created was quite good too. Maybe you should give that a try. Number 21, The Secret of Donkey Island. Recently translated by a pair of DOS Twitch streamers, this Czech parody/sequel to Monkey Island 2 is a surprisingly playable and enjoyable point-and-click adventure game. Sure, there are all the hallmarks of it being an early fan game developed by teenagers, but they did enough right here to merit further exploration, and the translation is excellent. The names might be different, but the humour and the characters are there, so give it a try. Plus you can eat an anchor. That's pretty sweet. The idea, not the anchor. It tasted like barnacles. Number 20, Bubble Ghost. The sound was dreadful, but the game itself was refreshingly different. You're a ghost, you blow a bubble through an increasingly complex number of obstacles, and you have to master angling your spectral protagonist and blowing just the right amount in order to get your exceedingly fragile payload to the exit of the level. Do that quickly and you get a bonus score. It's one of those games I thought was neat, and then my subscribers kept calling it a classic, and apparently a remake is coming soon too. Good work as usual by ERE Informatique. Number 19, Slipspeed. Despite being made in this decade rather than the 80s or 90s, there's no denying that Slipspeed is a quality slice of hover racing fun, in the vein of Micro Machines and Death Rally, only without the weaponry. Speed across top-down futuristic landscapes, and acquire money in your choices of statistically relevant hover racers. Just try to avoid colliding with things, as a low bounce score will stop you dead in your proverbial tracks. A quality little DOS game jam racer that's head and shoulders above its 2020s peers. Number 18, Yo Joe! While I'm not the biggest platforming fan, there was no mistaking the smoothness of this impressive port from the Amiga by Scipio and Hudson Soft. Jump, crawl, kick, beat, slide, and swim your way to victory, through plenty of levels of platforming fun, in this 1 or 2 player side-scroller, or just grab some weapons and attack your enemies with those instead. Failing that, you can still appreciate the excellent pixel art and level design before dying repeatedly like I did. Number 17. Lighthouse. A first-person horror adventure from Sierra in the style of Myst and Riven. Lighthouse places you in the shoes of a reclusive author on a personal retreat who witnesses lightning strike the nearby lighthouse. Little does he realize the mind-bending interdimensional inventory-based problem-solving feats he must soon perform in order to survive. Definitely a game to have an FAQ nearby for, but despite its difficulty, it's an underrated attempt at moving to first person from the point-and-click masters. Number 16. Bricks Free. Super Logic. Remember Puzznic? Remember the first Bricks? They both appeared in previous top 25s, and this formula is continued with the excellent third iteration, complete with gravity reversal and all kinds of new and nefarious puzzle mechanics to engage the old grey matter, all backed by a tremendous score and solid fundamentals. It's more of what you already love, but new fans to the genre might struggle with the initial difficulty. Another great puzzler. Number 15. Alpha Waves. The first 3D platformer ever made. An abstract voxel representation of a human mind is navigated by bouncing a jet-powered device that makes its way through levels, exploring landscapes and collecting crystals to extend the time limit. There doesn't appear to be an end goal other than exploration for the sake of it, but the alluring shapes and ad-lib music that changes based on your progress makes for a unique third-person platforming experience that's both of historical interest and kind of zen when you aren't limited by the timed version. Number 14. Museum Madness. A malfunctioning robot called Mick informs our child protagonist that things are not right in the museum. You could even say it has succumbed to a form of madness. In this point-and-click edutainment game, you must use your brain across several exhibits to stop history from reanimating itself, and bring order to the chaos that continues to unfold within. And because you're in a museum, your logical deduction and historical knowledge will improve too, a handy side effect of this educational adventure. It's not for everyone, and the puzzles might prove a bit frustrating for fans of wackier adventure games, but I personally enjoyed myself. Number 13 and 12. Formula Carts and Manic Carts. I came across Manic Media Productions twice in this run of random games, and both times they kept me playing. There are any number of great DOS sports games that merit inclusion into these lists, but fall short due to being surpassed by latter-day titles with better engines from the Windows era. But the world of traditional kart simulation didn't have that many sleek and well put together entries until much later than other racing categories, with most of them focusing on being kart racers, or to put it less politely, knockoffs of Mario Kart. After all, who wants to mess around in karts when you can drive Formula 1 cars, or race in rallies, or drive through the streets in a Porsche or Lamborghini? Well, turns out I do, especially when it controls like a Jeff Crammond game. It was really fun driving and sliding all over the short tracks in my vehicle, to 90s dance music with an enthusiastic announcer occasionally shouting encouragement in the latter title. It was a big surprise to see such well put together kart sims grace the DOS gaming sphere, and it should serve as a welcome change of pace for fans of racing games. Number 11. Zeppelin Giants of the Sky. A sepia-toned business management sim from the turn of the 20th century, all about the management of Zeppelins. You fly passengers and cargo through the skies and visit all kinds of interesting places, beholden to telegram-printed historical events as time passes. Can your company survive the turbulent decades as you upgrade and improve your empire? Or will you become a brief floating memory fueled by dashed dreams and depleting hydrogen reserves? It might not be the greatest title the genre would ever see, but Zeppelin offers a unique playstyle that fans of Microprose strategies will find suitably diverting in their quest to scratch that capitalistic itch. Number 10. Hack. Another text-only game enters my top 25 and puts the roguelike on the map, with a seemingly prescient understanding of mechanics throughout its dungeon-delving procedurally generated levels. Fight against all kinds of nasty monsters, purchase or acquire increasingly useful equipment, level up and go deeper into more difficult levels to face even greater peril. Hack took the rogue formula to the next level, and its impact lives on through its successor NetHack, which is played on the regular by its adoring fans to this day. Number 9. Sim Ant. Colony simulators are very popular these days, but the first real standout title to my mind was SimAnt by Justin McCormick and Will Wright, appearing decades before the codification of a genre and having you manage a literal colony of ants. You do this by controlling a single ant at a time and have them pottering around the overworld and hive, claiming territory and expanding operations. In addition to this RTS-like environment, you also have the ability to influence the general behaviour of your ants, and group together to form a massive roaming gang. You can either sit back and let the other ants construct your nest, or you can tunnel out things yourself. The choice is yours, and the campaign mode allows you to gradually claim more territory and invade a human's house. Much like SimEarth, it's another fantastic simulation from Maxis, and will appeal to management fans, so long as they don't have a fear of insects. Number 8. Lynx, the Challenge of Golf. The first Lynx game builds upon everything established by Access Software's previous world-class leaderboard and direct competitor, PGA Tour, to create the template for golfing games to come. Detailed courses with realistic geometry and physics for their time, its VGA graphics and voice acting were phenomenal and have aged well, with multiple courses and even a practice mode so you don't embarrass yourself too much. It eventually morphed into the tremendously popular Microsoft Golf, a staple for all multimedia PCs of the time. The humble DOS version still ranks up there as one of the best games for the system, alongside PGA Tour 96, which I really should have included in a previous list. Whoops. For number 7, Fantasy General, a strategic simulations wargame and a fantasy spin-off to the best-selling wargame of all time, Panzer General. Fantasy General uses the same engine and ideas, but appears to be influenced by the likes of King's Bounty instead. Part of SSI's legendary 5-star General series, it features a hexagonal map that you march troops across in tactical engagements. But instead of the convoluted systems of usual wargaming, the interface is much more approachable to the masses. Vie for territory in the overworld, and then attempt to play rock, paper, scissors with your units, where battles are lost before they begin should you choose the wrong engagement strategy. A superb score, excellent sound effects, and solid graphics round off the presentation, making this an easy recommendation for lovers of fantasy and wargaming aficionados alike. Number 6. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings Volume 1. A classic top-down CRPG from Interplay that takes its cues from the greatest book in literary history, The Lord of the Rings. The wonderfully atmospheric Shire and the CD-quality orchestral music welcome you into a real-time environment with turn-based combat and menu navigation. Form your fellowship and traipse across Middle-earth in an attempt to cast the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. But don't be surprised if there's a lot of non-book material that you run into along the way. The vast world that Tolkien created is fleshed out with additional quests, dungeons, side characters, and a lot of intriguing dialogue that would form the base from which Interplay would go on to develop Fallout, which also featured a large chunk of the design team of this title. Sure, it's never going to rank among the greats, but it was the best depiction of Middle-earth for over a decade, and fans of both Tolkien and old CRPG titles would be remiss in passing it by. Number 5. Scourge of Armageddon. Much like Malice, Hell to Pay, and Perdition's Gate before it, Scourge of Armageddon comes from a time where pasting your own levels and textures over somebody else's engine got you called an expansion instead of a brand new game, so it owes much of its brilliance to the work of id Software. But Ritual Entertainment, then called Hypnotic, are no strangers to excellent FPS design, and right from the first level you can tell this is a quality sequel to the original classic, featuring a who's who of former Duke 3D, Rise of the Triad and Blood developers, and more Doom expansion level designers than you can shake a stick at. The result is simply a foregone conclusion. 15 fantastic new levels in an all-new campaign, and I didn't even make it past the first one on easy. Oh dear. Number 4. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. Never has such a good game been so unsuitable for me. Abe must escape the killing floors of Rupture Farms after discovering his people are to be eaten, then guide them safely before orchestrating an all-out revolution against his oppressors. Unfortunately, Abe is also the most easily killed creature in the game, perishing at the slightest provocation. The platforming takes the best elements of Another World and Flashback and gives them a bizarre stylistic makeover. It's not for the faint of heart though, reveling in the ways it can kill Abe in gruesome fashion. So for fans of difficult platformers, Abe's Odyssey is a must-play. For people with all the dexterity of a baby elephant, it's an exercise in frustration. Trust me. Number 3. SimCity. When you strip away its name, its creator, Will Wright, and its massive influence, SimCity is dry, unassuming, and surprisingly simple to play. You're top-down instead of isometric, there's no sound beyond a few token effects, and the new game option is a procedural sandbox with seemingly no particular end goal or consequences. It really isn't much to look at if you were to watch someone playing it over their shoulder. Despite all this, when you actually sit down to play it, it becomes utterly compelling. Cultivating your little city like you're pruning a bonsai tree, the miniature cars and buildings not only lure you into a strange state of zen, but serve as indicators about the well-being of your city. A simple and coherent menu system with 2 window panes and the odd budgetary pop-up is all Will Wright needed. It's a piece of design artistry that has spawned an entire genre of builders. Even if it technically wasn't the first, an open-world procedurally generated crafting sandbox where you make your own rules sounds familiar. SimCity's impeccable presentation and game mechanics laid the foundation for thousands of games to come, and it can be enjoyed on modern machines for free with the release of Micropolis. Go check it out today if you haven't. Number 2. Duke Nukem 3D. This testosterone-fueled build masterpiece puts you firmly in the boots of the most macho protagonist ever, returning to Earth on a sweet alien ride only to have them blow it up. Oh, they've also invaded the planet, and it's up to Duke to become a one-man steroid-fueled army to deal with their incursion and save the babes. One of the best FPS games ever made, Duke is a member of the holy triumvirate of 90s shooters to utilize Ken Silverman's 3D engine. A logical evolution to the themes first introduced by Doom, but with a different approach to the danger that hordes of enemies can cause you. You'll have to utilize a dizzying arsenal of explosive weaponry, or just abuse the shrink ray in your mighty boot. Hail to the king, baby. I know, I can't do the impression. Number 1. Sid Meier's Colonization. Possibly the greatest turn-based strategy ever made, Colonization by Sid Meier and Brian Reynolds is a classic microprose title about landing in the New World as one of 4 European nations. It takes its cues from Civilization, but there's enough to differentiate it that fans of that series will find it a worthwhile play. Establish your colonial frontier and deal with natives and rivals alike in this 4X turn-based title, complete with raucous, contextually sensitive period soundtrack and helpful tutorial to get things going. The choice between a pre-generated America or an entirely new procedurally generated map means that playtime is near infinite, though the game itself lasts over 300 years of American history, and the lack of direct sequel means that it's one of the only games in its class. Colonization arrived in that golden period of turn-based strategy before it became bogged down with too many menus and micromanagement. It's simple to pick up and play, but the underlying mechanics allow for more involved strategists to get a suitably competitive game out of it. And despite the occasional attempt to improve upon the formula, Colonization is another great example of a DOS game that did it first and did it best.